This is the new 2017 Surface Pro. The model that I'm reviewing here is the i5 with 4 gigabytes of RAM. If you want to see the full tech specs, you can see them down below in the description. I'm not going to be focusing on the tech specs because I'm an illustrator and I want to know what's it like to draw on one of these. What is most important about this new Surface update is actually not the Surface itself, but this pen. It doesn't come bundled with the Surface Pro anymore. It costs an additional $100. Previously, you could pick up a pen for $40 for the old Surface Pros. So the real question here is it worth the extra money? In short, yes. The pen has over 4,000 levels of pressure sensitivity, up from the 1,000 that it had in the Surface Pro 4. And the Surface Pro pen now has tilt functionality as well, something that many artists have been clamoring for. But wait, there's more! The pen is also backwards compatible. You're not going to get all 4,000 levels of pressure sensitivity, but with a future software update, you're going to get tilt support. And this pen also works on the Surface Pro 3, the Surface Pro 4, the Surface Book, and the Surface Studio. In the past, the biggest drawbacks of the Surface was the pen, and specifically the amount of jitter that you got on that pen when you were drawing slow with it, especially with diagonal lines. This made it really hard to do precise line work, and I and many others ended up using a stroke straightener if we were doing that kind of work. I'm happy to report that it has been dramatically improved. So here I am on the new Surface Pro. I have the new Surface Pro pen, and I'm going to do some of my angled line tests. To start, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and then I'm going to get in here and put my line in. And I'm just going to draw really slow, and I'm going to just show you how much or how little jitter there is. Now, I'm not using a ruler, and as you can see, that line looks pretty darn good. You can see a little bit of the jitter, but it's not nearly as bad as it's been in the past. For comparison, I have the Surface Pro 4 pen right here, and I'm going to draw that on the new Surface Pro just to show you how that looks. I'm going to try to keep my hand as steady as I can, and I'm just going to keep drawing this out so you can kind of see how this works when I draw on a slow angle. Now, you can see there that the jitter is definitely noticeable when I'm using the Surface Pro 4 pen, not nearly as noticeable with the new pen. I can still tell that it's there, but it's dramatically improved. I'm going to pull out my little T-square here so I can actually get a straight line, and now I'm using the new Surface Pro 4 pen, and usually I get a little bit more jitter when I'm using the ruler than I do when I'm just doing it by freehand. There we go, that's a nice little line. You can see there's a little bit of jitter there, but it's not too bad. Again, Surface Pro 4 pen. Let's take this one. And I'm just going to draw out this angle here very slowly. And you can see it's getting those jitters in there. So yeah, jitter is still there, but dramatically improved. I really don't draw that slow when I'm drawing. Usually my drawing speed is kind of somewhere in this range, and in this range, I'm not going to get any jitter at all on that pen. The other thing that I wanted to check out is I've switched over to Sketchable, and I want to show the initial activation rate of these pens. One of the things that a lot of people said, this is the Surface Pro 4 pen, the older pen, and if I just hold it really lightly and glide it along the surface, it's not really activating the line until I start to apply just a tiny bit more pressure. So let's take a look at the new pen doing the same thing, barely holding on to it. You're starting to get lines, but a little bit more activation force on this pen than there is on the old pen. I also notice more pressure sensitivity. If I start off light and then I press, I get a thicker line easier with the new pen. With the old pen, that's me pressing as hard as I can. You can see it's a thinner line using the same tool. Let me zoom out a little bit here. Some of the other things that I like to check out when I'm using a pen is, can I hold pressure when I go around curves? Does it get too thick? If I do a circle, can I hold the same amount of pressure around the entire circle? Here I can do that pretty easily, so if I go a little harder, I can still do that. Being able to just kind of vary my pressure as I'm drawing is a really nice ability. It's something the pen's always done well, so I'm not surprised that it still does it well. But yeah, this pen is going to pass that with flying colors. All right, I'm going to undo those lines, otherwise I'm going to freak out. Just for fun, this pen is backwards compatible with the older Surface pens. So this is sketchable, and this is the brand new pen on my Surface Pro 3, and I'm just going to do this little backwards compatibility test in Sketchable. As you can see, the jitter and this pen is still definitely there, extremely noticeable on the Surface Pro 3. With every version it gets it's a little bit better. When I use my old Surface Pro 4 pen, I still get that jitter. So you could see on the Surface Pro 3, how they have improved the pen over the years is dramatic. I can also say that if you're thinking about getting the new pen, hoping to get the same results on an older Surface Pro, you're not going to get those. Also, tilt support on the Surface Pro 3 will be coming. Right now, it's not there yet. I have to kind of tilt it up before I start to get that line again. But that is coming with the software update. I have no idea when, but I'm sure I'll be talking about it when it does come out. So how is the tilt, you ask? Well, in Photoshop, it's kind of hit or miss. I heard that Photoshop needs to actually update their software before it could take advantage of the stylus. But you see up here in the upper left-hand corner is the angle of my brush, and if I set it down and I tilt it back and forth, you can see that it's detecting the tilt, but I don't think it's actually changing the brush or how the brush behaves in any meaningful way. Now, if I jump over to Sketchable, that's a different story. I've got my pencil selected here, and if I start with my edge here, I've got a nice like side gradient, whereas if I just use the tip, I'm getting that rough pencil. So tilt definitely works on this. I'm not a huge user of tilt in my styluses, but it is nice to have. What about the Surface Pro itself? The 2736 by 1824 screen resolution returns for the Pro 4, and it is a beautiful screen. They also upped the response rate in the pen. Can I tell? Hold on, let me check. Nope. I've seen a lot of tests around where people draw in slow motion, and they do this to show that the pen is more responsive than it used to be. I don't really care much for those tests. My general feeling is that if you can't really tell just by looking at it, then it's not that important. I never really felt that it was a drawback before. The Surface Pro hardware itself is not that different than the Surface Pro 4. They've updated the hinge to make it easier to draw with at a lot of different angles, and this is probably the major disappointment that I have with the new Surface Pro. In previous videos, I've talked about how much I like the hinge. The software thing doesn't pan out for Microsoft could always become like a hinge company. But the new hinge isn't as stiff, which is probably fine for most people who are just using it as a laptop and want to open the hinge easily. But for someone like me who likes to rest their hand on it, I find that when I set it at an angle I like, if I rest my hand on it in any way, it's going to sink down to its lowest level. I also am not a fan of its lowest level. It now rests a lot lower than Surface Pro 3 and 4 did before it. This isn't the end of the world, but I really wish it was something they hadn't changed. Also, I did not pick up one of the new keyboard covers. The main reason is because the keyboard covers are backward and forward compatible. One of the new ones will work on one of the old Surface Pros, and my old one works just fine on the new Surface Pro. Now, the processor that I got is good enough to run any drawing software that you're gonna throw at it. If you can, I would recommend jumping up a spec from mine to get the 8 gigabytes of RAM. With Photoshop and Illustrator running at the same time, I did notice a little bit of lag on my brushes, specifically some of the more intensive Photoshop brushes. Also, if you're the type of person who works with really big files, having all that extra RAM is gonna be nice. But for my tests and what I'm doing here, ran fine. Also, and this is cool, the i5 models are now fanless. I was worried that the screen itself was going to get really hot without the ability to vent out some of that extra heat. But I can say after using it for several hours, I had no problems at all with that. In fact, I was even screen recording through most of the time that I was drawing, and it still wasn't warming up and getting very hot. So this is a little change, doesn't really affect the core of what you're doing with it, but it's a nice user experience touch. So what about battery? Microsoft claims that you get 13 hours of battery life out of this thing. Now, of course, I was incredibly skeptical about that. Probably if you like turn the screen way down and are only doing something that doesn't take up a lot of power, you're gonna get those 13 hours. And as it turns out, that's pretty much the case. I would say that you're easily going to get 6 to 7 hours of drawing out of this tablet per charge. I was really hoping the battery would clock in closer to 8 or 9 hours. I know this is pretty common practice for everybody in the industry to inflate the battery life of their computers, but at the end of the day, Microsoft, you look bad when you claim that you can do something, but only if the screen is turned way down and you're doing like one super simple task. People are going to be mad at you. Why don't you set the expectations a little bit lower and then meet those expectations and make your customers happy? Since everybody is going to ask, I'll answer the question now. How does this compare to the iPad Pro? I've done other videos on this. I've done a whole video comparing the iPad Pro to the Surface Pro, and another video comparing the Surface Pro to the Wacom Mobile Studio Pro, all sorts of stuff. I've compiled all that over on my website with other comparison things that you might want to know before you buy one of these devices. Link down below. And even though to most people they look very similar on the outside, the keyboard and the pen, they're very different devices. But here's the too long didn't read version. The Surface Pro is a full-blown laptop replacement. In fact, Microsoft nowadays doesn't even call it a tablet, they call it a laptop. The iPad is a companion device. You're still gonna want and need a laptop. And to me, they are just very, very different devices. I've had the chance to use a lot of different drawing devices over the last 2 years, and the Surface Pro still remains one of my favorites. And this one is definitely a great successor to the Surface Pro 4. What I like most about it is just how portable it is. It's a full-blown computer, so I can work on it all day, anywhere, and then when I am done, or if I have to go somewhere else, I just flip up the cover, I take it with me, and then I can open it wherever I wound up and continue working. I don't have to transfer files back and forth and all the other stuff that I might have to do on an iPad Pro. In fact, if I wasn't doing these kind of tablet videos and video editing in general, I could really see the Surface Pro being my only computer. If you found this video helpful, there are 2 ways you can support me that are hugely helpful. The first is by hitting the like button down below, and the second is if you decide to buy something, click on one of my Amazon links first. I get a little bit back from that, and that sort of thing really helps power this channel and helps me do more reviews. I would also like to thank everybody who supports me over on Patreon. That's another way to support me, and every $1 or $2 really helps out. Thank you all who support me over there, and if you have any comments or questions, let me know down below, or you can always hit me up on Twitter. That's all I've got. I'll see you guys in a couple of days.